and not tangible.
I think everybody likes myths and legends. It's partly the mystical element, that we don't know everything. Arthur is the great folk hero. So there is a sort of almost a wish for there to have been an Arthur, even if he hadn't actually existed. And that's the big question. If he didn't exist, somebody like him certainly did.
Graham Phillips is the best-selling author of the book, The Search for the Grail. He's a frequent lecturer on history's unsolved mysteries.
Of course, the stories of King Arthur slaying dragons and damsels in distress are obviously made up. But there is, it seems, an historical figure upon whom these legends were based. What I find fascinating is very often you will find that behind certainly the medieval romances, that there was a grain of truth.
When we return, Graham Phillips uncovers a secret cup in a remote part of England. According to him, it's the cup that inspired the legend of the Holy Grail. In England, Graham Phillips is on the trail of King Arthur and the Holy Grail. His detective work takes us away from Glastonbury Abbey and northwards to the county of Shropshire. Situated on the border with Wales, Shropshire is the home to the ruins of Whittington Castle.
In the stories where Arthur's knights go searching for the Grail, they find it at somewhere called the White Castle. Now, Whittington Castle, that's actually the word Whittington means white town. And Whittington Castle was called the White Castle in all the early references to this in the Middle Ages.
Looking into the legends of Whittington, Graham Phillips researches a 900-year-old romance called Fulk le Fitzwarin, written around the same time as the King Arthur stories. In the legend, Fulk Fitzwarin is portrayed as a direct descendant of King Arthur, and therefore the rightful protector of the Grail. Fulk keeps the Grail hidden away in a small chapel. Then, on his deathbed, he gives specific instructions to his family that the precious cup be hidden somewhere else. This may simply be another legend, like those based on King Arthur, but there is one key difference. Unlike Arthur, whose existence is debatable, Fulk Fitzwarin was a definite historical character who lived right here in Whittington.
This family, the Fitzwarin family, continued to live at Whittington Castle throughout the Middle Ages, and this cup was supposedly passed down through members of the family.
Graham began tracing the family tree. 400 years after the time of Fitzwarin, the cup is mentioned in another story, this time in connection with a place called the White Abbey, a mere 6 miles from Whittington. The final reference comes in the form of a poem, published last century by a descendant of Fulk Fitzwarin named Thomas Wright.
This family continued to keep this cup in their possession until the last of them, around about 150 years ago, decided that he was going to hide it.
The poem speaks of the cup being moved from the White Abbey to the vicinity of the Red Castle. This is Hawkstone Park in Shropshire, home to the ruins of the historic Red Castle. The poem ends abruptly before the final hiding place is revealed. At the bottom of the page, however, a series of Roman numerals stands out as a possible clue. Puzzled, Graham turns to the Bible. There, in the book of Psalms, he finds a possible answer. For each Roman numeral in the poem, he selects the corresponding passage in Psalms. Incredibly, the results read like a specific set of directions.
And the first one said, "I lift up my eyes unto the hills," and the second one said, "Lead me to the rock which is higher than I." It was clearly leading us from one place to another.
Standing near the ruins of the Red Castle in Hawkstone Park, Graham begins to follow the clues.
There's only one place that you can lift up your eyes unto the hills, which is a huge great cliff, which is opposite you, known as the White Cliff.
From the White Cliff, Graham is directed into a series of caves. After making his way through the dark, he emerges into a valley. The clues lead him to the doors of this small church. Once inside, he reads the final passage in the sequence.
I turned my eyes to the right and I beheld, and right in front of me is a stained glass window, and it depicts the four gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And they are holding, as you would expect, the books, the gospels that they'd written. Except for one of the figures, the one who's supposed to represent St. John, is holding a chalice. I'm thinking, this is strange. Why is he holding a cup? He should be holding a book.
The answer lies in the figures portrayed above the gospel writers. A bull, a lion, an angel, and above St. John, the one holding the Grail, an eagle. The caves that Graham just navigated his way through once held 4 statues representing these 4 figures. Unfortunately, the statues were removed from the caves in 1920 by this man, Walter Langham. Yet according to a local newspaper article from that year, when Walter Langham moved the eagle statue, there was something inside. Remarkably, it was a small cup. There's only one course of action left. Graham tracks down the great-great-granddaughter of the man who last set eyes on the cup. Much to his surprise, she knows exactly what he's talking about, though she has little idea of its significance. In the attic, she looks through boxes of family keepsakes. Graham's anticipation is keen. A 2,000-year-old mystery hangs in the balance.
That's it.
That's it?
That's the one.
You sure that's it?
Yeah, that's definitely it. That's what my mother had.
Oh my God. That is incredible. That is remarkable.
Hoping to learn more about this particular cup's origin, Graham enlists the help of colleague Andrew Collins. They visit archaeologist Rosemary Arscott, a specialist in Roman pottery.
What sort of age would you put on that?
First century AD.
So it's Roman then?
Oh, yes, definitely.
It does date to the right time frame of the age of Christ. It is virtually impossible to place an exact date on it. All you can really go from is the style and the similarities with other artifacts.
Whether it could have been brought direct from the Middle East or whether it could have come via other areas. And again, that's something that is very difficult to determine. So I guess they're questions that one would like to know and probably would never know the answer to it.
What exact role this cup played in history is open for speculation.
It may or may not have had anything to do with Jesus, but it certainly, in my opinion, is the cup that inspired the romance of the Holy Grail.